G'day, my name's Graham. I want to explain how Agenda 21 works in a series of videos to bring a bit of clarity to this. Agenda 21, which some people may be aware of, is the idea to reduce human population. It's how they do it, the science behind how they're doing it is what most people do not understand, other than those people who designed the science and designed the system in the first place, using a program codex which is political correctness. And I say, I'm suggesting the EU, which is a far-right organisation, and the BBC, which is pretending it's a left socialist altruistic organisation. It's just pretense, that's all it is. They're an elite far-right group, if are owned by the far-right by financial means, and the so-called Illuminati, whoever these people are, have designed or developed this thing, or behind this thing called Agenda 21, to reduce the human population. And there's a reason why they're doing it. There's actually a reason behind it. They have a reason, I should say. They have a reason for doing it in their minds. And they do it by destroying the survival imperative of the individual by creating a cognitive blocking emotional attachment to a collective, organised to suit the capital agenda of an elite. Agenda 21 is a reduced human population, is based on the knowledge robots and AI will replace humans in almost all tasks except breeding. And what the elite want is only the best selection of humans to breed amongst. That's what it wants. It wants to eliminate the ones it sees that it thinks it should not be breeding one way or another. That's what political correctness is all about. Eliminating poor people as well, the ones with less potential or no longer any use to the regime in a capital or material sense. There's no spirituality whatsoever in this agenda. This is a death of spirituality. Agenda 21 may well have begun in Germany when the Nazis were using more robust means of reducing numbers of humans. The elite ordained we're not fit to be amongst the Aryan race the Germans are. And what were in the way of their ultimate goal, total control over humanity. We must ask which races would have been next if once all Jews had been eliminated, if the Nazis had won. Then we must ask, did the Nazis ever give up their goals? We know maybe they did not. Lots of them were moved to America in Operation Paperclip. And then we will not get into how they combined with the Stalinists when they walked them down in Germany, because that extends the story. But that sort of says enough. They both have learned the techniques, the science of manipulating populations according to their agendas, to control the populations through programming them with emotional attachments to an idea, without having the fear of intellectualizing any instinct or intuitive thought. Agenda 21 works by direct mass control of humans through recent politically created war, mass control over humans. It does not create direct mass murder of humans, sorry about this. Does not create, it's not actually involved with mass murder of humans, but it has been involved in mass murder of innocent Muslims, just to eliminate a couple of people who would not sign on to the central banking regime, Gaddafi and what's the other fellow's name, Saddam Hussein. They wouldn't sign into this, and then they're after Assad because he won't sign on to the central bankers regime anyway. So they're after Assad as well. He's suddenly the monster. So they create all the deaths and say, oh, it's all to blame. He's all to blame. Hardly. If he had Damascus, one of the freest countries in the freest place in the world to live, far freer than some places in Europe, and yet they're saying this bloke's a monster. What is a monster these days? They're hidden in plain sight. What the idea also behind this was to, by going in and destroying the peace, whatever it was, in the Middle East, which should have been left to itself, it's mind its own business, whether they have democracy or not, none of our business. They're their own people doing their own thing. It's interfering with them is racism, like it or not. Being racist by interfering with Muslims, saying you've got to be like us, that's racism. That's saying your system's inferior. That's exactly what they're saying when they're saying that. In other words, they talk rubbish. And what they've done then is cause the dispersal of millions of Muslims into the Western world to create massive overcrowding. Instead of sorting problems out there, they've created problems to then create massive overcrowding within Europe in particular, and particularly in Britain. And what happens when you look at lab experiments involving rats, when you put them in overcrowded areas, the males start killing each other and they start eating each other's babies. That's what happens when you have a shortage of space for people living. They start becoming and disparate groups. The idea that you can have two totally different philosophies and cultures living and assimilating it doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. The rat experiment has been carried out by the EU, the UN, and aided by the BBC by pushing the idea you can have endless numbers of millions and millions of people going to live in Britain when it's a very small country and it can hardly support the people it's got already financially. We are creating massive more debt, now causing a much more struggle for the poorer people, including the blacks what go there. They will become poor, and then because they become poor, they won't get as rich as they think they will, otherwise, other than crime, they'll start to cause frictions within society. That's what it's about. That's what it's all about. If it were not true, I mean, if there were white people were invited to go and live in South Africa to help that place develop, instead of the genocide what's going on down there, or the potential for genocide, if black African countries were saying, come down here white people, we'd like you to help develop our countries using your industrial intelligence, and that's what you need to do that, then we could say yes, it's all right, there's no racism involved in there, but there's a politically correct racism. It's not actually racism in a real sense of the word, it's tribalism. The BBC is saying it's alright for the black tribes of Africa to defend the males there, to defend their territory, but it's not alright for the white tribes of Europe to defend their territory. In other words, it's promoting racism against whites by blacks. That's what it's doing by its propaganda that all whites are racist if they defend their tribal areas. But it's just a natural phenomenon, going right back to primitive conditions, right down through the animal kingdom. And it's very difficult to assimilate people of totally different, if you like, philosophies. And the cultures are different philosophies and thinking, customs in the way they think. And to expect them to assimilate, it's like, it doesn't actually make sense. It's illogical to suggest it can happen. Because I doubt if any one of these people in the EU and Illuminati assimilate with anyone amongst very, very select few that they assimilate with. They don't associate with the lower echelons along society very easily. In fact, they're trying to eradicate them through Agenda 21 because they can't stand them. The thing is, the BBC is supporting the Agenda 21, whether it likes to admit it or not. It's totally and wholly intrinsically involved in this by encouraging millions of people to go into Europe, and by saying that white women should hate white men, but it's not saying the same thing about black men and black women. It's not saying that everyone's got a culture, but the only culture that's not allowed to be itself anymore is a white male white female culture that's attacked as being bad for women, yet all other cultures who may not treat their women quite as well just yet, and that may be the problem with their societies, or the way they treat women, maybe the problem, or the whole of the problem with their societies is based on how they treat women, yet that's supported by the left, what say supports women, and it probably totally contradicts everything it says and makes out and shows and proves by actual factual scientific objectified evidence that it's lying, it's dishonest. It's because the BBC is racist. It says the black people are less able to intellectualise what is going on, and it's so that's why it's saying the black people can't tell what's going on, so it's using them for weapons against white people. And it's developing enmity against white people by saying all white people are racist simply because they want to defend their territory. And then it's created the idea of climate change, which means you can freeze all people to death. So it's eliminating, that's a eugenics program there and then. But it's also going to use microwaves through phones and fluoride in the water and dumbing down the population in the universities and education system so they can't actually think constructively and creatively and instinctively for themselves. So they are less able of surviving as individuals. And that's what it's all about, eliminating the will for self-replication and the actually how to go about making sure you do survive under any circumstances other than getting into having to survive through crime and criminal activity, because you have to release your energies somehow, which some people are tendency to do. You put people into poverty situations, and lots of people who aren't quite industrialised in the idea of going for a work for a living, or there's not enough work for them, you're bound to create a lot more criminals. So what they're bringing into England is a lot more people are going to end up in English jails, which is a really sad thing when you think about what's really going on. They're using black people from Africa to destroy the English people's well-being, and that's all they're doing. They're not improving things. It might be better for the blacks in some ways than they were, but surely if they sorted their countries out, they'd be better places to live in England in many ways. Surely no matter how the society is in any particular place, that makes a place amenable and livable. It's nothing to do with the location. It's how the society is in any particular place. It's moral values, the moral principles of its leaders, and the moral values of its people, that makes a place worth living in. It's nothing to do with its wealth, because that's an establishment of wealth, is those moral principles in leaders and in the population. You establish those. That's the best form of equality, and the only real form of equality there is. Those moral principles. Civilization was founded on by the Sumerians, thousands, hundreds of centuries ago, and now we've gone back to some tribal jungle law of the jungle ruling. That Agenda 21 is all about the law of the jungle. There's nothing to do with the human civilization. It's totally barbaric and uncivilized.